succeeding on Amazon, it's not just about your own product, is it?
Yeah.
Or your own ads. It feels more like this constant strategic dance.
It really is. And what your competitors are doing, the whole market fight, it doesn't just affect today's sales. It actually shapes how Amazon's system, well, remembers your performance over time.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it. And if you're not watching those external forces, your competition, the market shifts, you're kind of flying blind, right?
Completely. Understanding how all that interacts with Amazon's, let's say, core mechanics,
Yeah.
like the A10 algorithm and this thing called ranking memory, it's crucial, non-negotiable, really.
And that is exactly what we're digging into today. Just for you, using the source material you shared, we're doing a deep dive into competitive analysis, market dynamics, how they hit your Amazon PPC, and this, critical idea of ranking memory.
We've pulled together insights from various research questions, analysis excerpts, stuff that really gets into Amazon PPC, how A10 works, and specifically how competitors and the market mess with things.
So think of this as your insider briefing. Our mission today: unpack exactly how competitor actions, bigger market shifts, how they influence your ads, your visibility.
And how Amazon's system actually reacts to all that pressure.
Right. And most importantly, what you can strategically do about it. We're going to walk through the insights just like they're laid out in your source material, cover every detail, make sure you get the full picture.
It's like seeing the code behind the marketplace, Understand the forces you can't control so you can manage the ones you can.
Okay, let's jump in. The core idea, pulling straight from the source material: competitor advertising activity. It significantly influences your individual seller ranking memory.
Yes, and how it does that is by changing those key metrics the algorithm watches like a hawk. We're talking click-through rate CTR, conversion rate CVR, and your sales velocity.
So what they do directly changes the signals you're sending to Amazon. How does that actually start?
Well, it often begins with ad rank competition and what the source calls visibility suppression. Basically, when competitors bid really aggressively on keywords you share.
Yeah.
It just cuts down your ad's visibility, your impression share, right? If that drops, your ad is shown less often or maybe in worse spots.
And if you're in worse spots, that means lower CTR and CVR.
Most certainly. Your ad isn't seen in those top prime positions as much. So fewer clicks, that's lower CTR, and potentially fewer conversions hitting your CVR.
The data in the source on this is pretty stark. It says if a competitor's bid is just 50% higher than yours,
Yeah.
their ad can totally dominate top of search. We're talking capturing 70%, maybe even more, of the impressions for those really important high-intent searches.
Think about that for a second. If you're only getting, 30% or less of the chances to be seen for a key term because someone's outbidding you, that immediately tanks your performance metrics.
And the source connects this straight to ranking memory. It says a 30% drop in your impression share correlates with a 15 to 20% decline in your CTR.
That's a really critical connection. That CTR drop, driven by competitors hogging the visibility, directly chips away at what the source calls your historical performance equity. That is your ranking memory.
So you're not just losing the click right now.
No, you're weakening that historical signal. The signal that tells Amazon, hey, this listing is relevant, it performs well for this keyword.
Wow. Okay, so it's not just a temporary bid war. It's actually an attack on your long-term algorithmic standing. And that damage, it ties into how Amazon weighs your past performance, something called power law decay acceleration.
Exactly. Amazon's A10 algorithm, it doesn't treat all your history the same. It uses this power law decay model. Basically, recent performance matters way, way more than older stuff.
How much more?
The source highlights the last 30 days account for about 60% of the ranking calculation.
60%, just in the last month. That feels incredibly fast. Your recent performance carries so much weight.
It does. And this is where competitor actions just make the problem worse. Their sustained high bids can actively suppress your metrics. CTR, CVR, sales velocity, specifically during that critical 30-day window.
Okay.
So that suppression happening during the most important period, it accelerates the natural decay of your older, maybe stronger historical data. Your good history loses influence faster because your recent performance is being artificially held down by competitors.
Okay, so suppressing your metrics in the last 30 days speeds up the erosion of ranking memory. And speaking of velocity, losing ground there, especially recently, must hit your sales momentum hard. leading to these sales velocity feedback loops.
Absolutely. When competitors snag sales that could have been yours, maybe through their aggressive ads, it directly slows down your product's organic sales velocity.
And the source gives a specific number. Every $1,000 in lost PPC sales can depress your organic rankings by 15 to 20%.
Think about that negative cycle. Competitors win ads, you lose PPC sales, your organic sales velocity slows because Amazon sees less demand overall. That slowing organic velocity further compounds the ranking memory decay from your suppressed ad metrics. It just spirals down.
And competitors seem particularly good at exploiting weaknesses, like stockouts. The source mentions stockout vulnerability.
Oh, definitely. If your product goes out of stock, even for a bit, competitors can swoop in and permanently claim a big chunk. The source says 40 to 60% of your historical sales velocity for certain keywords.
40 to 60%, that's huge. Permanently.
Yeah, because during your stockout, they build their own history and momentum on those terms. Your listing loses that piece of its historical association. So when you finally restock, your recovery is way slower and harder. You're starting from a weaker historical spot for those crucial keywords.
Man, so it's really about building and defending those historical signals, not just winning the immediate click. And competitors aren't just fighting on your main keywords, are they? They're using sophisticated tactics, leading to keyword relevance dilution.
Right. They're not just going head-to-head on your exact terms. They might be using advanced tools. The source mentions BERT-driven ones.
BERT-driven, what's that mean practically?
So BERT is a type of AI that understands language context really well. These tools help competitors find and bid on terms that are semantically related to yours, like Bluetooth earphones if you sell wireless headphones. Even if the words aren't identical, the meaning is close. And they use broad or phrase match to capture that related traffic.
Okay, so they're widening the battlefield to related concepts. How does that dilute my relevance, though?
Well, when the search results get crowded with ads for all these related terms using broader matches, it can kind of fragment user attention. It can actually dilute the effectiveness of your exact match CTR, even when your ad shows for the perfect term. And the source has data. Just a 0.3% CTR drop on your exact match terms can slash their relevance scores by 25% in the algorithm.
Wow, such a small drop, but a big hit to relevance.
It really is. And this strategic targeting, plus consistent high performance by competitors, it can threaten something called your evergreen status.
Evergreen status, what's that?
It's when competitors consistently maintain really high metrics. The source specifies a CTR of 0.8% or higher and a CVR of 12% or higher for a long time, like 90 days plus.
Okay.
They can achieve this evergreen status for keywords. Basically, their strong, sustained history builds massive trust with the algorithm. Amazon starts to really strongly associate that keyword with their listing.
And what's the effect on me?
It gives them a huge advantage. It can suppress your visibility for that term, even if your bids are decent, maybe even slightly lower than theirs, just because their ranking memory for that term is stronger and more trusted.
Wow. Okay. That paints an intense picture of the competitive battlefield and how it directly hammers away at that ranking memory.
Yeah.
The good news is the source also outlines proven strategic countermeasures. It's not game over.
Definitely not. You can absolutely fight back. Let's start with bid optimization.
What's the advice there?
Okay, one key tactic is day parting. Being strategic about when you bid most aggressively. The source suggests putting more budget, like 50 to 75% into peak hours. Often that's maybe 7 to 9 p.m. local time when conversion rates tend to be highest.
So you focus your firepower when buyers are most likely to actually buy.
Exactly. You outmaneuver competitors during those golden conversion windows. Another tactic mentioned is portfolio isolation.
Portfolio isolation.
And what's that involved?
You take your absolute best keywords, the highest value, top performers, the ones critical for you, and put them in their own dedicated campaigns or portfolios.
Yes. Then, the source suggests hitting them with significant multipliers, like 200 to 300% top of search bid boosts. This is about defending your priority terms hard against competitor aggression. You're basically signaling to Amazon and outbidding others to make sure you dominate where it matters most to you.
Okay, so smart bidding on Amazon is key. But the source also really stresses leveraging external traffic.
Oh, yeah. This comes up again and again as a powerful countermeasure. You need to actively drive trackable clicks from off-Amazon sources.
And the data sounds pretty compelling. Driving 15% or more of your total clicks from places like TikTok or Instagram. It can trigger 2 to 3 times the normal organic ranking boost.
It's huge. Because this traffic, it brings in fresh, often high-converting signals that aren't caught up in the same on Amazon ad bidding wars. It can directly help offset CTR declines you might be seeing on Amazon from competitor ads. It's like giving your listing an external boost.
And within external traffic, influencers get a specific mention.
Yes, specifically nano-influencers, those with, say, 10K to 50K followers. The source data shows they yield 3 times higher CVRs than micro-influencers.
3 times higher. Why nano?
Probably a more engaged niche audience connection. But the key is high CVRs from any source, especially external, are gold to Amazon. They signal your product converts well, and that fresh, positive data helps reset those ranking memory decay curves.
Okay, so beyond bids and external traffic, there's advice on strengthening the listing itself and operations creative and inventory resilience.
Absolutely vital. First, regular creative refresh cycles. Update your main images, your titles. The source recommends doing this every 45 days.
Every 45 days. Why so often?
To combat creative fatigue, the source found CTR can drop by 19% or even more over 60 days if your visuals get stale. And since maintaining strong CTR is fundamental for ranking memory, keeping your listing fresh is a direct defense mechanism.
Keep it looking sharp to keep the clicks coming. Makes sense. And inventory management. Crucial.
Critically important. Maintain FBA buffering. Keep 120 to 150% of your average inventory levels on hand. Why? Because stockouts are killers. The source says significant stockouts, like happening more than 5% of the time, can tank your ranking memory by 40%.
40%.
Yeah. So avoiding those stockouts preserves 92% of your ranking momentum when you do replenish. It's just non-negotiable for long-term stability.
Okay. And finally, competitive intelligence, knowing what the other guys are up to.
Yes, and using that info strategically. One tactic is ASIN targeting. Use tools Helium-10 Cerebro is mentioned to figure out your competitors' top-performing keywords.
And then what? Go after them.
The source suggests considering bidding 110 to 120% of their estimated CPC on those specific terms. You challenge them directly in the auctions where they're strongest, make them pay more or lose share.
Take the fight right to their turf.
Exactly, and also use dynamic repricing tools, Seller Republic is mentioned. These adjust your price in real time to stay within, say, 10% of rivals. This matters because big, sudden price swings can hurt conversion and trigger algorithmic distrust, both bad for ranking memory. Staying close avoids that.
Right. These strategies sound powerful against direct competitors. But the whole market environment, the level of competition itself, that also shifts the rules for ranking memory, especially in crowded niches.
Yeah, let's dig into the impact of high competition on Amazon ranking memory. The source draws a clear line here. In those super competitive categories, think electronics, maybe some dense home goods areas, ranking memory behaves differently.
How so?
Amazon's A10 algorithm basically turns up the scrutiny. It watches your metrics closer. It accelerates the speed your historical data loses influence. That decay we talked about gets faster. And it raises the performance bar you need to clear to gain or keep trust.
So the standards are higher, and your history fades quicker.
That's the gist. You've got accelerated decay of historical data. Amazon uses a steeper power law decay model in these competitive niches. The source says the last 30 days, which was 60% elsewhere, now counts for about 70% of the ranking weight.
70%. Even more emphasis on what just happened.
Right. And the weekly decay rate, much faster. It's 12% weekly decay in electronics compared to a slower 5% weekly in home and kitchen.
Wow, more than double the speed your history loses value.
It is, and that steeper decay means products have to maintain super consistent high sales velocity. The source mentions 15 units per day or more just to avoid tanking in the rankings. A short slump, maybe just 7 days, can wipe out 40% of your historical equity in these fast decay categories.
And you mentioned elevated performance thresholds, too. It's not just decay. You actually have to perform better to be considered good.
Absolutely. The bar is higher across the board. The source data compares standard versus competitive categories. CTR needs to be 0.8% or higher versus 0.5% elsewhere. CVR needs to be 12% or higher versus 10%. And sales velocity, $3,000 a week versus $1,000.
Whoa. Okay, so roughly 60% higher CTR, 20% higher CVR, and triple the sales velocity just to meet the baseline in these crowded spaces.
That's right. And the example given is telling. A smartphone with a solid 90-day CTR of 0.7%. In a competitive market like electronics, that might only keep 60% of its potential visibility. In a less crowded niche, that same 0.7% CTR could retain 85% visibility. Your history is worth less relative to the higher bar.
So given those tougher thresholds and faster decay, external traffic must become even more critical as a lever.
Absolutely vital. The source shows campaigns driving 25% or more attributable external clicks versus 15% elsewhere get even bigger organic ranking boosts in competitive markets. We're talking 3 to 4 times the boost, equivalent to maybe 25K in PPC spend.
That's a huge difference, an extra $10K equivalent boost compared to standard categories.
Yeah, it shows external traffic acts like a supercharger, specifically to combat the challenges of competitive markets. And the benchmark data backs it up. Top 10 products in competitive niches average 30 to 40% external traffic. Compare that to 15 to 20% in less crowded areas. The winners are using this heavily.
And I guess everything else just gets harder too. Inventory, pricing, creative refreshes, making PPC and organic work together.
They all intensify because you just have less room for error against those tougher standards and faster decay. Every part of the machine needs to be finely tuned. The source even includes a table on category-specific algorithmic adjustments. It shows, for instance, electronics faces 25% CTR weighting, 30% CVR, and that fast 12% weekly decay. Apparel is slightly different. 30% CTR, 25% CVR, 10% decay. Home and kitchen, 20% CTR, 35% CVR, but only 5% weekly decay.
That table really drives home how different the fight is depending on your category.
It does. The takeaway is clear. Electronic sellers face twice the historical data erosion compared to home and kitchen sellers. Ranking memory strategy is definitely not one size fits all.
And the source mentions higher risks in these competitive zones too.
Yeah, a couple of things. For new sellers, CPCs are significantly higher, 50 to 70% higher than established players. Also, weird spikes in CTR, like over 300%, get flagged much faster by Amazon systems. They might trigger SLIDR audits, maybe campaign freezes within just 24 hours. The system's just more sensitive when the competition is fierce.
Okay, so it's tough out there, especially in competitive niches. How do the leaders stay on top? And can anyone new actually challenge them? Let's look at how market leaders sustain ranking memory advantages.
Right. Market leaders, they don't just think about today's rank. They treat ranking memory like algorithmic equity. They're constantly investing in it, defending it. It's a combination of relentless metric optimization, strategic aggression, and just operational excellence. They leverage the system.
How do they actually build and maintain that equity day to day?
A big part is their evergreen campaign architecture. They are laser focused on hitting and maintaining those high thresholds, CTR 0.8%, CVR 12% for 90 plus days to lock in that evergreen status on core keywords. Achieving that, the source says, cuts their CPC by 20–25% compared to others. Huge advantage.
Wow.
And they constantly prioritize recent performance, knowing it has that massive 60% or even 70% weight. They use aggressive bidding during peak hours specifically to counteract that power law decay.
And they're pulling in external traffic too, I bet.
Oh, yeah. Actively driving 15% or more attributable clicks from off Amazon for those 2–3x organic boosts. Often using those nano influencers we talked about who deliver 3x higher CVRs, it just reinforces their position from multiple angles.
Inventory and price stability must be rock solid for them.
Absolutely. They maintain super low stockout rates, 5% or less, which preserves 92% of their ranking momentum. Critical. And they use dynamic repricing tools like Seller Republic to stay within 10% of competitors' prices. Avoids algorithmic distress, keeps things smooth. They prevent operational hiccups from damaging their equity.
And they're playing defense too, competitive defense.
You bet. Aggressively using AI targeting, bidding 110–120% of competitors' CPCs on their top keywords, forcing the competition to fight harder or pay more. And they lock down their own branded search terms with exact match campaigns. No competitor is stealing those valuable branded clicks that should be reinforcing their own ranking memory.
They're also constantly optimizing creative and metrics.
Refreshing images, titles every 45 days to stop creative fatigue and keep CTR high, fighting that potential 19% drop. And they use A-plus content, videos effectively lifting CVR by 15–20%, just constantly feeding positive signals into the algorithm.
And they're using tech, advanced tools, and automation.
Leaders leverage AI. The source mentions Celix A10 Optimizer for forecasting bid adjustments, improving win rates by 40%, and tools like Dynamic Creative Optimization plus A or DCO plus AC to test thousands of ad variations an hour. Ensures their creative is always optimized, which feeds right back into CTR, CVR, and stronger ranking memory.
The strategic outcomes table in the source really quantifies this advantage. Market leaders, 25–30% lower CPC efficiency compared to new entrants facing 40–60% higher bids. Organic visibility retention. Leaders keep 60–80% after a pause. New entrants face a painful 50–70% recovery time. And ACOS, leaders hit 15–20%, way better than the category average of 25%, while newbies struggle at 30–40%.
That table says it all. Strong ranking memory isn't just about being seen. It's cheaper. It's more stable to operate when the algorithm trusts you. They've built a virtuous cycle.
Okay, so they built this incredibly strong base, this fortress of ranking memory. But is it truly impenetrable? Can new competitors actually break in? Let's look at challenging established players.
It's definitely tough. The source is clear. New products lack history, leading to those much higher CPCs, 40–60% higher. Incumbents have that evergreen status, locking down visibility on head terms. And yeah, there's a risk of cannibalization if you target keywords a leader dominates organically. You might just steal sales from your own potential organic rank without really hurting the incumbent.
The deck is definitely stacked. But the source says disruption is possible.
Yes, but you need a smart, asymmetric approach. You need strategies that exploit A10's priorities, especially its responsiveness to recent data and external signals. You can't just copy the leaders. You have to play differently to get a foothold.
So what are some of those proven strategies for disruption?
External traffic integration is massive here, maybe even more critical for challengers. Driving 15% or more clicks from TikTok, Instagram. Again, yielding those huge 2–3x organic boosts, like getting $15 pay and free ad spend. Using nano-influencers to get high CVRs quickly. It injects powerful, fresh signals that build trust fast, even without history.
So don't just charge head-on at the main keywords.
Not usually at first on the most competitive ones. Use niche targeting and keyword optimization. Go after long-tail, lower competition keywords like wireless headphones for gym, not just wireless headphones. Use aggressive bids, 150–200% on these niche terms to build that initial CTR-CVR equity without breaking the bank fighting a leader. And use those BERT tools to find related terms the big guys might be ignoring.
You also need aggressive PPC architecture early on.
Yeah, employ bid sprints. Use huge multipliers, 300–500%, top of search boost during peak hours. Force your ad into visibility, push that CTR above 0.5% quickly, and use portfolio isolation to shield your best campaigns. Focus budget where it makes the fastest impact on key metrics.
And content and inventory agility. Be faster.
Even more agile than the leaders. Refresh creative more often, maybe every 21–30 days, keep it optimized. And absolutely maintain that 120–150% inventory buffer. Avoid stockouts like the plague. You cannot afford that 40% ranking decay penalty when you're fighting uphill.
The source even provides a roadmap, right? The algorithmic trust-building timeline table?
Yes, it breaks it down nicely. Phase 1, launch, days 130. Heavy external traffic blitz plus targeted exact match PPC. Goal, hit CTR, mere 0.5%, CVR, within 10%.
Okay. Phase 2.
Growth, days 31–60. Migrate winning keywords carefully to broader match types. Use day parting. Goal. Push CTR 0.8%, sales year 15 units day.
And then phase 3.
Evergreen, day 61+. If you've succeeded, you can start easing off bids, maybe 20–30% lower. Leverage your growing organic rank. Focus shifts to maintaining stability in CTR-CVR and keeping stockouts under 5%.
That's a really concrete plan with clear targets.
It is, and there's that home and kitchen case study showing it works. New entrant used 25% external traffic from TikTok recipe videos, very targeted. They went after long tails like silicone muffin molds, non-toxic, with 200% bids, refreshed creative biweekly, maintained a strong 1.2% CTR.
And the result for them?
Reached hashtag 12 bestseller rank in just 45 days. Much faster trust building than just throwing PPC budget at head terms.
So that really shows it's possible with a focused, different strategy. Are there specific risks, though, beyond just being hard?
Yeah, the source points out a couple. Weird CTR spikes over 300% can trigger those SLIDR audits from Amazon. They look for manipulation. And budget is a big one. New sellers often need 2 to 3 times the initial investment compared to incumbents just to build that initial history and overcome the disadvantages.
Okay, so challenging, yes, but doable with a smart, aggressive, agile playbook focused on hitting those algorithmic signals fast. All right, finally, let's look beyond direct competitors, how broader market conditions can suddenly change the rules and how much that historical ranking memory even matters.
Right. This section is on market conditions that rapidly alter the importance of historical ranking memory. The core idea, your history, your ranking memory, it's valuable, but its influence isn't constant. Certain market dynamics can force Amazon's algorithm to basically ignore history, or at least downplay it, and prioritize real-time performance instead. It makes the system more volatile.
Like during big sales events. Seasonal demand surging.
Exactly. Prime Day, Q4 holidays. During these peaks, Amazon's algorithm shifts focus dramatically. It wants to maximize sales now when traffic is insane. So it heavily prioritizes real-time conversion rates and click-through rates above almost anything else.
So in those moments, immediate performance trumps long-term history.
Pretty much. The impact. Historical metrics decay faster, 8 to 12% faster, because the algorithm adjusts its weighting for the peak. Their overall influence drops by 30–40% temporarily. The example given. A product with a great 90-day CTR of 0.8% might suddenly need 200–300% bid boosts just to stay visible during Prime Day. Why? The algorithm cares more about immediate sales velocity right then, not your solid history from last month.
Inventory stockouts also drastically change how history is valued, it seems.
Oh, yeah. As we said, stockouts are killers, and they trigger this rapid reevaluation. Stockouts happening more than 5% of the time for 7+ days. They severely erode historical equity, leading to that huge 40–60% ranking drop when you restock.
That penalty basically resets your standing.
It does. The gap in sales and CTR signals an algorithmic loss of trust. You lose momentum, you'll need big bid multipliers, 150–200%, just to start clawing back visibility and trust, which again highlights why that 120–150% inventory buffer is so critical. Avoid the penalty in the first place.
What about broader economic downturns? How do they mess with ranking memory?
Recessions change how people shop. Spending might shift to value items, necessities. This changes keyword relevance, forces competitors to adjust bids.
And how does that impact the value of your history?
Well, your historical ACS or ROAS targets might suddenly be way off because buyer behavior and the competitive landscape shifted. You need to reallocate budget. The source suggests 20–30% shifts are often needed towards the high-intent keywords where people are still spending. The case study showed brands that kept up their impression share, 50–75%, during downturns actually gained 15–20% market share from competitors who pulled back. Agility beats relying on old strategies.
Competitive disruptions themselves can also rapidly change things, right?
Yes. If new entrants or aggressive rivals suddenly start using those 300–500% top of search bids, they fragment keyword relevance, steal impressions. It actively erodes your evergreen status unless you react quickly. Your history becomes less variable if you aren't defending it against current attacks.
External traffic influx keeps popping up. It affects market conditions too.
It does, because it injects totally new demand signals, driving 15% plus attributable clicks via TikTok, Instagram. It effectively resets or recalibrates ranking memory by bringing in these strong, fresh signals.
They can override weaker historical data.
They can significantly influence it. Those 2–3x organic boosts, like getting $15K in ad spend value, can help override less favorable historical CTR or CVR thresholds you might have been stuck with. The recommendation: allocate 20–30% of budget to these trackable social campaigns, specifically for this algorithmic recalibration effect.
And finally, algorithm updates from Amazon itself can instantly change the game.
Oh, yeah. A major A10 update, maybe they start weighting video engagement more, or A+ content, or change how reviews count. That can abruptly shift the algorithm's focus. What used to matter most historically might suddenly matter less.
So what worked great last year might not after an update.
Exactly. Listings without video might suddenly see CTR drops. The source mentions 19% drops because the algorithm now values that engagement. It forces you to adapt, maybe refresh creative every 45 days, just to fight this new decay factor introduced by the update. Constant vigilance.
The source gives specific strategic recommendations for these volatile times, peak seasons. Preload bids 30–45 days early. Use aggressive day parting, 60% spend 7–9 p.m. Post stockout. Use sponsored display retargeting, coupons to quickly restart sales velocity. Economic shifts. Use Amazon attribution to see where converting traffic is really coming from. Balance history with real-time intent.
It just shows you need to be proactive and reactive, tailoring your approach to the specific market storm you're weathering.
So the big takeaway on market conditions: historical memory is valuable, yes, but its influence really depends on stability. When things get volatile peaks, stockouts, downturns, updates, Amazon's algorithm pivots fast to prioritize real-time performance.
Which demands you be incredibly agile, with budgets, with creative, with leveraging external signals. That savings account of historical data is great, but its spending power fluctuates wildly with the market economy.
Okay, let's wrap this all up. We've done a deep dive into how competitors, category intensity, and market shifts really shake up your Amazon ranking memory, that algorithmic history of your performance.
We saw competitors aren't just bidding, they're actively trying to erode your ranking memory. Aggressive bids, smart keyword tactics exploiting stockouts, especially in tough niches where history fades faster and the performance bar is way higher.
And we learned market conditions, seasonal rushes, downturns, inventory woes, even Amazon's own updates can suddenly make the algorithm focus on right now, potentially diminishing the value of your past wins.
But crucially, we covered the strategies to fight back and build that memory. Smart bidding, like day parting, portfolio isolation, bringing in external traffic, especially trackable social clicks, keeping Create fresh, and maintaining rock-solid inventory.
The core takeaway feels really clear. Ranking memory isn't static. It's not a set-it-and-forget-it thing. It's a dynamic asset needing constant feeding, defense, and quick adaptation, especially when competitors get aggressive or the market shifts. It's truly your algorithmic equity on Amazon.
And you have to actively cultivate it, defend it
Yeah.
against competitors, against market chaos. It's continuous.
Well, thank you for joining us for this deep dive into the competitive landscape and market dynamics hitting your Amazon ads.
Yeah, hopefully these insights give you a clearer map of the forces at play and, importantly, the levers you can actually pull.
Definitely take these insights, think about how they apply to your campaigns, your overall Amazon planning, and maybe chew on this final thought, building on what we've covered from the source. Given how fast market conditions and competitor moves can devalue your history, how will you build a system that's not just optimized for today's rank, but is agile enough to sense those shifts and adapt your strategy to protect that crucial ranking memory in real time? Something to think about.